3, 2, 1. Go yours, Tucker.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the stream discussing TO judging and other decisions to be made with our special guests, Max Brooke and Yoon. Hi, Max Brooke.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yep. And Yoon.
Hi, I'm here too. What an honor and a treat.
And also
in the same breath.
Yeah, and joining us today also Ben Doyle from Australia. Hi, Ben.
Hello, hello.
So, why don't let's go around and do some self-introductions in the same order. Where you're from, how you got into X-Wing, and how you made the transition to judging, TOing, and kind of like the various like upper management, shall we say, positions in X-Wing. So, Max.
Yeah, so I guess I'm the odd one out because I don't have a upper management position in the community. I'm actually the outsider now. But yeah, so my name is Max Brooke. I worked as an X-Wing developer for about 5 years at Fantasy Flight Games, and I left that back in the fall, and I've been freelance since. And yeah, I got involved in X-Wing because they wanted to get some new folks on X-Wing. I played it, I knew minis games, and so I got pulled onto that. And very shortly after being brought on to the dev team, I was sent off to judge events, which I did not feel at all comfortable doing because many of the players were very, much better players than I am. So I felt very self-conscious, and my shaky hands made all sorts of table calls a problem. But fortunately, eventually, this shifted us over to marshalling rather than actually judging. So I didn't have to go to the table and accidentally knock everyone's ship over when I was checking an arc.
I've done that. I have done that at a system open.
Yep.
You're like, well, sorry, you called me here to help out, but yeah, I just made it more confusing. Oh dear.
Yep.
And so for people who want to know, Max Brooke's website, Babblings of the Brook, an excellent website. We're showing it up here, www.maxbrooke.com, a place to discuss and share game design.
And I have got an X-Wing related, just little fun fan thing I'm going to be putting up in the next couple days. I was hoping to have it up for tonight so that I could really push it tonight, but then life happened and my schedule slipped. But it should be up soon.
No worries. We will definitely plug it when you have it ready. So no problems. So let's see. All right. So Yoon.
Hi, everybody. I'm originally a Bronx boy, but spent my entire adult life in Los Angeles. I got into X-Wing because a friend of mine wanted me to play 40K, and he thought X-Wing would be a gateway drug. It turned out that it like X-Wing itself was the high level hardcore addiction. And in terms of making the transition to like becoming like judge and a TO and such, it's not particularly something I was interested in because at my core I'm a degenerate competitor. But whenever there's a vacuum, when you see like a job that needs doing that's not being done, I have this tendency to just, all right, I guess I'll handle it. Like at my LGS, this is where it all started. Our league organizer, he moved on, and I just took over. Yeah, I slipped in there because otherwise, like, we would have been done, I guess. And we couldn't have that. And then that just grew exponentially over time.
Now you're here, making rulings and whatnot. So we will get back to that in a bit. So yeah, anything else to add, D?
But is there anything I missed covering?
No. I mean, that looks good. Yeah. I mean, I started with 40K too, and then like you, turns out X-wing is much more in depth and more hardcore. So yeah, I feel you on that one. All right, Ben.
Very similar to D actually. Started playing X-wing back in 2014, I think just before the not Whisper, Phantom came out. Might as well be Whisper the ship, I guess.
Wait for.
Wave 4, yep. Introduced to it by a friend. It was actually my first ever miniatures game, which was fun. No painting is good. And yeah, eventually our resident TO here in Queensland moved on, and someone had to step up, and I got volunteered. So
You got volunteered.
Yeah.
Like everyone
mean,
stepped
I'm sure-
backward.
yeah, pretty much everyone stepped back. So no, it's good. Ended up enjoying it more than I thought it would. It's a very different but almost just as enjoyable way to attend an event.
Yeah, it's a different, like you have different pressures. Like
Yeah.
instead of trying to do well, you're trying to okay, please make sure I rule well. Like please, make sure everything's remembered, and if they call me for a question, please don't screw it up. Yeah, things like that.
Oh, for sure. The pressure's much more intense because as a competitor,
Mhm.
the worst thing that can happen is you go like 0-2 and everyone makes fun of you. But here, if you make a catastrophic mistake, like you're
Mhm.
you're ruining someone's competition experience. We just can't have that.
Yep, that's it's a more people-oriented thing than competitive like a issue there, I'd say. And they remember. So yeah.
Yeah.
Just before we get into it, I'm just gonna quickly describe myself. I'm Jarrett. I started X-Wing a couple years ago, and of course, friends and everything. And I'm in Singapore. Uh, I'm currently on the XTC team for Singapore. And I'm also helping out with the TO duties here along with Shane Mock, wonderful, wonderful guy, very capable behind the scenes. So just want to shout out to Shane. And all right, so let's get started. First question, actually, this was something that came out just a few hours ago, 12 hours ago. So there was a ruling made by the Illuminati, a secretive group of judges.
Technically, we hate that name. It's just the
Yes.
one that's stuck.
It's just yeah.
Yep. So
The name you
Basically-
hate is always the one that sticks around.
Yeah, I don't fight it. I embraced it, and I'm the one who dubbed the European counterpart group the Cabal, just to have some symmetry.
so it's about Hera, and so the ruling, as described, changes how Hera's ability works. So Hera normally allows you to pass tokens or pass a lock to friendly ships whether attacking or defending. And I think there is a ruling about the timing. So D, why don't you go ahead and explain to us a little bit about what is it?
Oh boy, we just finished deliberating and voting on this after almost a week. Let's see. I'll just read the post I put up on a couple of Facebook groups. We just completed a difficult debate and vote on the timing of Hera's ability. We are ruling that her ability resolves only during the dice modification steps, plural. This does prevent her from using her ability to satisfy special weapon requirements, but otherwise retains all of her flexibility while providing the most consistent and tidiest of rules interactions.
Mhm.
That's
Right.
the text of it.
So
Yep.
Go ahead.
We have a couple other things to vote on, but we will be I will be updating the unofficial supplemental rules document as soon as those are done.
So yeah, this ignited a firestorm on Facebook and on Discord last night. Well, last night for me, maybe like 10 hours for the rest of the world. So yeah, why is this controversial? Why is this making some people very unhappy? And
Because we took a little bit of something away.
you took the candy away from the baby.
Well, I mean, like the wrapper on the, I don't know. Like I don't know where the analogy goes, but it's like no, we took the stick away. The stick. You can have everything else. Hera's
But I
still
want the
crazy
stick.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Hera's ability is just one of those that's going to be want to cause these kind of issues just because it's so broadly written. Any way you rule it, someone will think you're wrong.
Yeah, I
Mhm,
actually don't think that there's a absolutely 100% correct rules as written interpretation for her.
Hmm.
I'm sure you got some questions as to, like that
Yeah.
we'll dig into.
So, I mean, yeah, I mean, before that, when Hera's ability was first teased, there was a little bit of, a lot of questions about, when does this apply? And it turns out that, yourself, Dee, also, you mentioned that you were talking with some people and it, you want it to be as permissive as possible. So pretty much the
Well,
entire,
there's a whole history there actually. Chris Mitchell,
right.
the head judge of the Cabal,
Mhm.
and I were being inundated by the like when does she trigger questions, and so we tried to find out
Mhm.
because there's while like we're scouring through the rules reference and that word while the entry says that it requires additional verbiage to specify to nail down the timing, not on the card. In other cases, like there are established timings for a certain interaction, so we know when those are. But Hera, like, wide open. So we tried to get some FFG direction, and some wires got crossed somewhere because our initial information was that she only worked at the like when defenders declared, which is actually really kind of bad, like inflexible, and that was our initial ruling. um and then we were approached actually by an FFG dev, a former FFG dev, clarifying she should be as permissive as possible, and we were given an example that you can wait and see dice results.
Okay.
And that brought us up to last night, I guess.
Right. So, Max, I think this is a great time to turn to you. How do you feel about, of course, you're a former developer, designer for X-Wing, so you're not in any official capacity right now, just, like you said, an outsider, interested observer. How do you feel about these, judging groups like the Illuminati, the Cabal, and how they try their best to interpret the game abilities and the game interactions?
So I'm going to get a little philosophical here because this is something that relates to the way games are played. But I have to say there's no feeling in the world more satisfying than when you write something kind of complicated and people get it. But there are plenty. But the reason that's so satisfying is because it doesn't always work. The way something works in the brain of the person who wrote it doesn't always translate onto every other human OS nicely. And so there's this like making a game is this like you're throwing these like I don't know cans of soda or something at somebody and hoping that they like get there without getting so mixed up they explode when they open them.
Mm-hmm.
Long and short, if the community needs a ruling, then the community needs a ruling. And, if there's a community organization that wants to step up and provide those, I think that's a perfectly fine thing. Like, things get a little more complicated when there are, like significant tournament series being run by the organization that also publishes the rules. But
Right.
due to COVID, there's not a lot of activity right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's not like there's likely to be a, ruling. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on at Atomic Mass, and they might well roll out a ruling tomorrow. But, there isn't a burning need to like there would have been if we had System Open around the corner. Back in the day, this is probably something that would have been hashed out, in sort of like various conversations between the judging groups, between the devs, between organized play. This is the sort of thing Matt Holland would come to me and be like, we need an answer to this. And I'd be like,
Right,
okay, well, what are the judges saying? What's their interpretation? Okay, well,
Mhm.
what did the developer think when they wrote it? Okay, well, what's the happiest medium? Like what requires the least errata? How can we move forward with it in the way that's best for everyone? On a macro scale within the considerations we have. And for all I know, those conversations are going on too. Again, I'm an outsider, so I don't know anything about the interior workings at this point. But what I do know is that there are plenty of games where the community drives the competitive scene. I mean, you look at Netrunner, a game that is still ongoing and still has a scene despite being out of print and no longer published, and it's getting new expansions. And I don't know. I think it's really exciting whenever the community steps up. And obviously X-Wing, I don't think it's going out of print. I don't think it's going anywhere. But COVID really threw a curveball into the competitive scene. And I think it's been great that people have really stepped up. And part of that does mean finding answers to these things. But I guess looping it all back around to something more soundbitey, I think as long as the ruling is clear and consistently applied at events, it seems like a good ruling.
Yeah, right. It's tricky. So I agree. You're talking about how we have conversations. So there are multiple levels, right? I'm sure. Like first is the the community, the players. Then there's the the various individual judges and TOs at various events, and they may or may not hew to the unofficial rules document, because I mean it is unofficial, right? Like it's not something that you have to follow to maintain being a judge. And then on top of that is the designers, or the people that are managing the license and the property. So yeah, how so there are many levels here. Do you guys have any suggestions on how to bridge the gap between the players and the I guess the designers, the rule makers?
Well, I have. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have a suggestion that's not very useful for X-Wing. Unfortunately. So one of the challenges too is that X-Wing is a licensed product, which means that there's another stakeholder in this conversation, which is Lucasfilm. Now, obviously, they don't really care too much about the rules most of the time, but they do need to see everything that Fantasy Flight, or now AMG, publishes. And so that's another complicating level too, where there's this there are other people who are allowed to weigh in and need to be given their chance to do so. So I guess the big thing I would say is, if you're doing an unlicensed game, if I was doing an unlicensed version of X-Wing or something, or a minis game in general that didn't have a licensor to do, I would want much more direct community integration than X-Wing has. But there are some legal considerations with making X-Wing that make that much harder than it would be to do otherwise.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Andy, I think you were gonna say something.
Yeah, actually, this has been my holy grail. Even more than just, let's say, making rules interpretations.
Right.
As soon as the great Ian Hamp, who was spearheading the so-called Illuminati originally, when he stepped back, that's when I sort of filled that void. My goals were to I hated that Europe and North America and Australia, we had on occasion varying rulings. It was like my my burning desire to keep rulings unified as much as possible. And then
You want to unify the world under one common creed, one common.
Right, we have people who travel across the pond to compete. They shouldn't have to worry about flying their squads in a different way, or changing their squads. It should be the same game, internationally. And then Max, I mean, it was we can't speak too much on it, but every interaction with you I've had has been nothing but a pleasure. Here's an example. We initially ruled Yushin as essentially having blank text. Okay, we're just as per raw, this thing just doesn't work. And that was our way of kicking it to FFG, who then proceeded to update the rules reference and that ended up clarifying in a really positive way how replacement effects work. And I've been since then been endeavoring to just close that loop as much as I can with as much communication as we're permitted, to just to have a quicker and better and smoother experience for all parties involved. And then of course right now though, we're just dead in the water, right? Like we're just adrift because we don't really have like authoritative sources to turn to other than the text, and we're just trying to rule as per
best
raw.
as we can.
But like, and we've really like, I don't know about the other judges. I'm not speaking for them, but me personally, like when Frank and Alex, those guys would say technically correct is the best kind of correct. I took that to heart, and we've been trying to adhere to that.
Oh yeah, wow, that's interesting.
Did-
So
I'm sorry. Like, hey Max, did I speak out of turn? Like I tried to.
No. I mean,
no,
No,
this
I
is
wouldn't say
this is
so.
a free form discussion here. You know, and yeah, I mean Ben here, you know, he's a TO. He's I'm sure you must have you know, made some rulings that you weren't prepared for, you know, beforehand, before the event or whatever. So how do you feel about that? Because it seems that, I mean, you're not like closer to the source, I suppose.
Nah, no, not as close to the source. So, yeah, in the far corner of the world, sometimes you just have to read them and make up the best ruling you can.
Make stuff up.
Yeah.
Well,
Pretty much.
I want to just quickly weigh in on that and say that I think that's very good.
Yeah.
At an individual event, a TO needs to make calls on the fly, and that's fine.
It's one of those, and what I've always told players afterwards where I go is I'll always tend to lean towards being as non-permissive as possible, because I find players react better to being told that, oh, your list should have been slightly better than it was, than being told, oh, your opponent shouldn't have been able to beat you with this card the way they were playing it.
Boundaries are good for children and gamers.
Yeah, pretty much. And the other one is just after making those rulings, just make sure people are aware. It's like, yeah, this is my ruling for the day. If it's wrong later, so be it. But having to make the ruling and then stick by it, and not letting players talk you out of it later on.
Mhm. So I guess this dives into something that, like Ben said, about the, you know, making it more restrictive instead of as permissive as possible. You know, what kind of like you know, when you're trying to make a ruling as a TO, a judge at an event, do you guys agree? Like, what kind of mindset you should have when you're trying to, you know, on the spot? Okay, you know, it's A or B. You know, A does this. If you kind of read it the other way, B does that. Should we consider the effects of what the ruling would give, or, you know, it's kind of like raw, read it, you know, rules as written, as what D has said. Anyone chime in?
I mean, when judging an event, you know, if I'm on the floor, I'm a firm believer in rules as written, play it where it lies. You know, again, this is different from a rules committee getting together and saying what is best for the game, but or a developer sitting down to do an FAQ saying what is best for the game. But as a judge at an event, I think definitely go for rules as written when possible, unless rules as written causes like the game to stop functioning or something, which can happen sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, how about that, D?
Well, that's so refreshing to hear, because I'm getting a lot of accusations currently of going rogue and not following rules as written, when in fact that is the core goal that our group is trying to adhere to.
Right.
I mean, so like preparing for any event, I try and collect questions ahead of time. So that gives me a little bit of leeway instead of just having a gun to my head and making a rash decision, which of course I have, like on occasion.
We have 5 minutes now. We've got to choose right now. There's no more time.
Yeah,
If only we had 5 minutes. I'll have 5 minutes. Just let me go consult with the other judge for 5 minutes. I'll be back. But no,
They're like, no.
You got a couple of seconds. Make your call.
Yeah, there are a couple of odd corner cases where raw is just clearly incorrect, like Chopper Astromech. No,
Yes.
not the Astromech crew. Like, I mean, clearly we're ignoring the rules as written. We're not going to just give people like extra actions willy nilly. And they're like interesting cases, like they've been now since sorted out in the rules reference, but between Europe and between the Cabal and the Illuminati, we were trying to hash out exactly what ignoring obstacles meant and the ramifications thereof. Like a whole bunch of stuff where, like, in actual practice, we've been ignoring raw the entire time at every level of play, up into like and including worlds. So sometimes established precedent has greater weight, and then ultimately whatever FFG said or moving forward, whatever AMG says is the final word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess for this, I mean, of course, for the Hera ruling, you have a lot more deliberation behind it, right? Like, I mean, like you say, you have a lot of discussion. So it's not just an on-the-fly rules as written. Is there like some, consequence or like a bunch of consequences or rules, or like you would break the game if you rule it this way or the other way? That's why you have to make this call.
That's how it started. Yes. Being like crazy permissive. We've got. Oh man, is this the part where we're really getting to the meat of this particular rules?
Why not? Why not? I mean, you have like 10 minutes to make your case.
Okay.
This is not gonna be the D-Yun like barbecue roasting session, all of it. So, but I
Oh
mean,
no, that's well deserved.
yeah, I
Just
mean, we are here for blood. I mean, come on, man. We are here for the blood sport. We want to see things happen.
All right, so 10 minutes, hot seat, TikTok. All right, for me, it's two-pronged. There's like a high level and a low level. On the high level, just technical rules end. The primary issue is timing. So because all abilities in X-Wing have they're defined by having a single distinct timing window with an effect, but Hera. Her ability directly contradicts how the basic ability queue works, like when they're triggered, when they're added to the queue. So if we're like just taking the broadest sense, like she's constantly triggering step 1A, like when you're measuring, add Hera to the queue. Step 1B, with every step and substep all throughout the entire attack chart she's trying to trigger. And
Technically,
the real
yeah, right. Yeah, because you have to, because they say while it's
They're
as
mandatory.
permissive as
yeah.
so you have to like basically, I mean, strictly speaking, you have to like say, all right, at this part, I acknowledge that Hera could work. I'm ignoring it. I'm passing it repeatedly over and over again.
Right.
I
So
think T made the point on Fly Better. It's just like if you put snapshot on Hera, she triggers every single time one of your ship moves.
right. If I have a ship with snapshot on my side, like you could be executing a maneuver with a ship that's like at range, whatever the maximum range is, like from corner to corner, and technically Hera would be entering the queue, and I could say I am reserving the right to pass this lock now, which is just patently absurd. And like there are people like actually defending that perspective, and I'm like, okay, I now see people that I will never trust to judge at any event that I'm at judging, that kind of thing. But the real problem with that, of her constantly triggering, is that if we are adhering to raw while attacking or while defending is a single opportunity. So at step 1A, if you decline to use her ability, then that's it. She no longer has any opportunity to ever trigger again. This is going pure technically by rules as written, mind you. Now, you could make the argument that each step is its own opportunity. You'd have to, I mean, you're just making that up if you argue that. Doesn't exist anywhere in the rules that I'm aware of. Because I hope you guys can appreciate how much time we spent examining this issue.
Yeah.
So like, and then let's just say for the sake of argument you did that. Every single little step and stub step is a new opportunity, and Hera gets to trigger a new opportunity to resolve. Well, in that case, we're terrified of how this impacts other abilities and upgrades in the game, right? So at this point, like we were considering, do we just are we just treating Hera as a one-off? She's just super special, and we only treat her that way. And all of this was deeply troubling.
Right. I imagine
on the,
like, yeah. Right. I imagine like some people are calling for Hera being a special off because her ability is really really good. And even if you don't push her to the absolute rules limit, it. I mean, this one really only applies like it. How you ruled is pretty much like how 90% of the time Hera is being played as. Like, oh, okay, I
Right.
roll and I see and I need a focus. Okay, pass over the focus, but you don't see the deeper level of like rules breaking here. What? How do you feel about that? Sorry to interrupt you. Like, I just want to make sure everyone has their piece here. How do you feel about that, Max? Like, the fact that you have to, you see like some of your abilities being altered because it has some knock-on effects that like terrifies people.
Well, so were I, still making X-Wing at Fantasy Flight, had this happened, a year ago or what have you, I mean, I wouldn't be that worried about it. I would just say, well, I guess Hera's getting an FAQ or errata, and that would be that,
Yeah.
And I'd probably confer with D and others, and it would be an FAQ that is within the category of because I told you so FAQs, of which there are always going to be some in exception-driven games, unless you have the kind of budget and staff that Magic the Gathering does. And even then, I still think there are some arguable because I told you so's.
Right.
But I will not. I will not claim that I understand layers. So, yeah. So I mean, it would just be something to figure out, right? And at the end of the day, in absence of any sort of formal ruling, the community needs to figure it out. And I think people stepping forward and coming up with an answer is good. If later AMG offers a formal answer that's an errata or an FAQ that clearly sets out parameters for it, then that's probably fine too. But I mean, it's one of those things. Again, like I'm amazed how often people understood what I meant with X-Wing cards. So I don't know. It's it's you get some misses, but it's very satisfying when it lands, and I feel like it landed more often than not most of the time. Especially given how much rules language I have crammed into my head from different games.
Must be confusing. Like Ben, so someone asked, like, can we not just wait till AMG drops the official word on this, like for Hera? As a TO, like, why do you think like sometimes we need to have some unofficial rules beforehand, and we can't just wait for them?
Mostly just because life goes on. Really, it's like you're not going to stop playing X-Wing until you get a ruling from the devs. You've got to have something in place so that you can keep running events. And consistency, especially in this day and age when we're playing online a lot, consistency is really important. So, yeah, we do need to have a ruling to go with. If it turns out to be wrong later, so be it. But it's very important for just avoiding player confusion to just have something sorted now so that we can keep playing X-Wing in the meantime while we wait for the official word.
It's a little like theater, right? The show must go on.
Show must go on, yeah. Exactly.
Was that a part of the reason why the Illuminati was, like debating and releasing information about this? Like, I mean, it only released like what a few weeks ago. About less than a month ago. The Squadron boxes, and so to some people, this might be like, whoa, this is really hasty here. Like, why are you guys talking about this?
Well, frankly, I was hoping to have this all ironed out before the product was released, so that we have a continuum of a consistent ruling on her until such time as AMG either alters it or confirms it.
Right. I think I get the gist that we basically have like, okay, we're gonna do the best we can so that we will get some short-term like outrage. So at least like most of the people out there are on the same page, especially when we are competing or in more like serious competitions online or in person, while being safe. Then when AMG steps in, we are like, okay, we follow AMG's ruling. Do I get that gist?
I mean, we're just trying to answer questions. People have questions, and then until they're officially answered, we're doing our best to help. For
Uh,
what it's worth, that unofficial rules doc, like in our defense, has been in effect for almost every Western Hemisphere System Open and Gen Con and Nationals and
we use it, yeah,
like all the way
yeah.
to
We use it in
Worlds.
Singapore too. Yeah, we use it in Singapore too. Like Shane and I. I mean, we are just two of us, in Singapore, and we can't like read everything and rule everything, independently. So we do have to rely on resources like that. So I think a lot of people who play like they think that every judge can just rule it, the way they want to. But
Yeah,
honestly, we don't have time. Like yeah, I mean, I cannot imagine Ben like gonna figure out all the role interactions on his own and just say, all right, I have my own unofficial rules documentation.
yeah. I kind of do that on event by event basis. Like if something comes out and then we have an event on before even the Illuminati can get something out, I've done like one shot event only documents. Just like this is how I'm going to rule it for this event, pending word from someone else
Right.
higher up the food chain than I am. But which is again, it's just a matter of you just have to have some consistency at events.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's really a judging best practice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's excellent.
yeah.
You want to communicate your expectations clearly to your player base, whatever the
Mhm.
scale is.
Right. And you're right, because imagine the outrage people are having right now before an event,
Yeah.
about this interaction. You don't want like imagine midway through an event, maybe like a cut or God knows, like a finals where one of the players rely on this particular interaction, and then they're gonna ask you like, no, hey, hold on, the other players like, it shouldn't work like that, and what are you gonna do? And the pressure on you must be so insane, trying to figure out something as complicated as Hera on the table on the fly while the clock is ticking. That is scary. That is very very scary.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I imagine that's why like people are putting this up. Like some says like, oh, we can't wait. Because people are playing, and you sort of have to like say something, especially when the knock-on effects are very very scary there. So yeah, I mean, I mean for Ben, myself, and we are all like judges in various capacities. And so yeah, I mean, I definitely sympathize with the fortitude and the that you've shown so far.
Oh, I mean, it's like I keep saying this, but it's my primary contribution to the X-Wing community is just to take fire.
Yeah, so that's very nice to hear that you are like the lightning rod. I think you've mentioned multiple times there. So Max, have you considered like being more active? Like you said, you're now an outsider, active in like maybe the discussion on rules and you know maybe on in the game itself in the community.
I think if I was so I'm definitely interested in being active in the community. I'm definitely like I enjoy opportunities like this.
Hmm.
I think it's best if I stay out of the rules discussions. To be honest, I mean I'll offer my opinion if asked, but I don't think I should become part of the Judge Illuminati because honestly, it is better if it is a group of people who are. I wrote too much of it. Like I have too many
Yeah.
of my own weird preconceptions. It's just better if it's other people. And so, like, I mean, if people have questions for me, I'm happy to discuss it, but I think it would not be a I don't think it would be like, I don't think I'd bring a lot to the table as a full-time member because, I don't know, it's sort of the death of the author thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
people need to interpret the work for themselves once it's out there. If I was still directly involved in making the game, again, like you know, always enjoyed interacting with judge folks when I was working on FAQ stuff. We'd usually poll and try to like get questions wrapped in and all that. But now I think it probably wouldn't be the best place for me, and I think honestly the community seems to be doing really well on its own.
I mean, we would love to hear. I mean,
now With that said, I definitely do plan to, especially once in-person stuff starts happening, I definitely do plan to try to get some local events in play. But this is also where I will embarrass myself because I'm not a very good X-Wing player.
That's okay. I mean, we're all terrible anyways. That's how we roll.
I'll just DQ all your opponents, Max.
Now that's spicy there. Max Brooke, world champions, 2020, 2030 or something. Like, yeah, everyone agrees. That's it.
Probably best if I went in jobs, to be honest. I think that's the thing that would make everybody the happiest.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, well, seeing as you said that you're happy to field any questions, I believe. No, this is just hot takes, nothing serious. But I believe, Dee has mentioned that there are some rulings, especially on Vader in the TIE Defender, that they're trying to hash out. Can we get some hot takes? Nothing binding to the people in this discussion here, but just why don't Dee just I'll read out the questions and we'll just go around quickly, like comment on the questions. All right. So. Vader Defender. Can Vader use foresight after a ship moves into its bullseye, like snapshot? D. Okay, no, Ben, why don't you go? You go first.
I would say no, because the attack has not started until after you've paid the cost.
Okay. How about D? What do you think?
Yeah, I think I was dumb. Europe ruled that you cannot, and when we shortly visit this question, I'm going to push to be in alignment with Europe's position.
Okay. All right, Max.
Yeah, I would say you haven't started the attack yet, so you're not into that meat of that while you perform an attack. Not to come to a contentious phrase.
Oh, okay. Wow, we have yeah. Okay, so you're saying that you can't Vader can't spend the Force to use foresight for its snapshot ability. I think that's a 3-0 on this side. Yep. But he can use it during the normal attack, choosing to use foresight.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. If you want to downgrade your gun for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get the range 3 bonus evade.
Yeah, there might be
shoot
some
with it.
weird corner case where that's mathematically optimal. Maybe.
Right.
But you
Okay.
can't. But then you can't even modify your blanks. Like you're now like erasing your pilot ability on top of taking away a die. That's all of that sounds bad.
I don't think it's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just want to be, like someone said, no, being technically correct, that's kind of correct. In some weird world that might work. So, all right, that seems okay. Again, this is just hot takes. You don't have to. We won't hold you to these. Next. Yes, Emperor Palpatine's ability. Can Emperor Palpy modify Vader TIE Defender's green dice? All right, let's start with Ben again.
I was going to go yes for this one because Vader's ability is just that he can't spend his Force tokens while defending, and he's not spending anything. Palpatine is.
Right. Okay.
Oh, sorry, he
Interesting.
can't spend Force tokens except when attacking, but he's not the one spending it.
I see. How about you, D?
That actually was my initial response as well, and then people pointed out the Padme Palpatine FAQ entry, which does make it seem like Palpatine stops himself from spending if there's a conflict with what's the line, like as if that ship had though, whatever the exact text is.
Yeah, Palpatine.
And so that confuses me because when I wrote it up for the unofficial doc, and I left it up for debate, and no one challenged it in the Illuminati, except now someone is.
Sounds okay.
Like one of our sharpest minds is now challenging that. So honestly, I don't know. I really don't have a horse in the race. I'm just looking forward to like hashing it out and just having a firm ruling.
Okay. All right. Max, what do you think? So I'm just gonna read
So-
out Emperor Palpatine's ability first. All right. Just
Oh, yeah,
in
go for
case.
it.
Well, Emperor Palpatine, while another friendly ship defends or performs an attack, you may spend one force to modify one of its dice as though that ship has spent one force. Okay. Go ahead, Max.
Yeah, so Vader and Palpatine in a vacuum, yes, definitely. So now let's talk about Padme. So Padme's wording is pretty different from Vader's. Vader says he's not allowed to spend force charge except while attacking. Padme says that ship can modify only one focus result. The results can still be modified. So there's some wiggle room in there. I don't know. I think that is one that would. This would be a long FAQ discussion, and this would definitely get an FAQ. So yeah, I can't really offer a like. I think there's potentially room that Palpatine does work with Vader, does not work with, but basically that Padme and Vader are different enough that Palpatine interacts differently. But there's probably good ground to argue that they're not too. So this would be an interesting discussion to get into deeply.
If I may, though, rules aside, regardless of which way the rules lies, this is a bad build. I advise that players don't pursue this in either eventuality.
What?
Emperor
Hang on,
Palpatine?
You're telling me that a 2-ship list with Vader and a shuttle is not a good list? How dare you?
Well,
it's gonna be great.
also consider pretty good in Epic.
Yes.
Oh
yes.
shoot! I always overlook Epic. I don't know how
Epic.
to play
Oh,
Epic.
geez,
Yeah,
that's a whole topic we want to. He's gonna take an entire interview episode to go through Epic and it's I bought everything about Epic and I still haven't opened them. It's tragic. It's sad.
Oh, they gotta at least go on your mantle. Those Epic ships are gorgeous.
They are.
I mean, if you can see my camera here, it's not as if I got a lot of space in my room to put anything there.
Make a mobile. Just hang everything from the ceiling.
Hang it there. Yeah. Okay. So looks like. Oh, wait. So what's the vote here? Can or cannot? So Ben again. Yeah. Can or cannot? Can Palpatine can modify Vader's green dice? Yes. D. Yes or
Mine
no?
was an abstention. I don't know.
Oh man, come on. You gotta. Nah, this is hot takes. All right. Okay. Fine. And Max. Yes. No. I think it's a yes.
If I had to rule it at an event right now, I'd say yes, and I'd also say that this might be different when the FAQ goes up, and I'm sorry.
Yes.
I think that goes with that. That's is sort of the.
I'm gonna push so hard for yes, so I don't get roasted.
Sorry, Ben, you were saying something?
I was like, with Max saying there's I'm going to say yes, but it's probably going to get FAQ'd later. I think that's
Yeah.
almost the unofficial line from all judges every time they make a ruling.
Yeah, it's like yes and a star there, star, pending.
big
Yeah. All right. Okay, final question. Can Emperor Palpatine modify Vader's red dice, red blanks? This has also implications for Fifth Brother's ability, by the way. So, okay, go again, Ben.
This one I'm a no on. Yeah, Palpatine's ability is very specific that it modifies the result, spend it for the default effect. So you can hit Vader's focus is fine, but you can't use it for Vader's pilot ability.
Okay, D.
That's the direction I'm heavily leaning now as well.
So can only spend you can only spend Palpatine's force to change one of Vader's focus dice to a hit. That's not the red
Correct.
blank to a hit. Okay, Max.
Yeah, I am definitely on team no here. Palpatine, I can tell you that if when this would have gotten FAQ'd under me, it would have gone that way.
That's more than good enough for me, honestly.
That's it. All right. Okay. Show's over. Done. We don't have any problems anymore. So yeah. I mean, all right. So I guess it's 3 no's. Wow. This is everyone's in agreement here. So we'll just post this video, and when D has to rule it that way, just point it just link it to this video, and yep, that's enough, right? 3-0. Yeah. So, all right, guys. Again, this is just hot takes here, and we have more stuff to discuss. So, yep. Like you said, there's more discussion, and you guys haven't voted on this yet. You know, the Illuminati. So, we hope there will be some consistent answers, even if you don't really see Emperor Palpatine and Vader coming up when Vader Defender coming up very often.
I know that's the thing. So often, because people demand it, we spend all like oodles of time working out some particular scenario, and then like it has like zero real world application.
Like, do you guys like? I don't know. Like, Max, do you guys like when trying to write new abilities, quickly find out like, oh, this cool thing that I was thinking of, quickly gets bogged down to, oh wait, but this would affect this, and then you water down the effect to become something really, really like milquetoast.
I mean, that was X-Wing First Edition development in a nutshell towards the end of it, yeah, because X-Wing First Edition wasn't written with a coherent syntax from the beginning.
Yeah.
So everything affected a million things. X-Wing Second Edition syntax is pretty tight. Frank did a really good job on that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there are some cards that break out from that. A lot of them come from the conversion kits, and you can blame those on me. I had to translate a lot of cards from the old syntax into the still yet undefined new syntax very quickly.
Very quickly.
And I'm surprised I did not create more horrible disasters. So, but yeah, no, overall, X-Wing Second Edition, from a development standpoint, not too bad. Things often get weird when you try to do something weird and interesting, which is a necessary part of game design, and also I know makes the judges groan every time they hear about it.
Oh my goodness!
But it
yes.
is necessary. Putting on my developer hat, like, you have to keep the game exciting. You have to keep the game vibrant. You have to do weird stuff and break paradigms sometimes. But ideally, you try to break paradigms at least in a principled, coherent way, so that it, when you introduce a new concept and like, okay, there's this exception around this complexity, try to take advantage of that a few times, try to generally, use it. If something's going to be complicated, justify that complexity.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, do you guys have any like stereotypes of the people who often like want to bend rules? I mean, not break them, but bend rules to satisfy this weird interaction that would make a list or a certain a certain ability viable? Like, is there a stereotype that you guys have encountered, whether as a designer or as a TO?
Is it the Timmy, the magic Timmy?
Yeah, so there's the magic Timmy, because there's the wanting those combos and such, but like Timmy can be a perfectly okay part of a game ecosystem. The interesting one. So I also work a lot on role playing games, and the interesting thing that I see is there's a group of people within the role playing game community, and I'm not judging these people for what they do. This is fine, but their primary enjoyment of the game is figuring out like how they can break it in a weird way to create some impossible situation, right? They really love the idea that like, oh, let's have peasants hand each other a long stick, and because of the way the rules for acceleration work, and there's some like vague stuff, and of course it's a role-playing game, it runs on a GM being able to say, no, you can't do that. Oh, we're going to create constant acceleration for a mile and fire this railgun into the dragon's lair. Railgun made of peasants into the dragon's lair. And it's like, honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. People are having fun. They're using their imaginations. They're enjoying the game. But you can't really write games for those people. Now, the interesting thing is in a competitive game, it's a little bit of a different story. Actually, I think the idea of writing a game for those people that would actually be played is a fascinating experiment, and I might try to do someday. But anyway, my point is just, with the competitive game, obviously you have more of that, but I just have this always, like, I don't know, any weirdness I see in X-Wing, at least I'm like, well, it probably kind of sort of makes sense most of the time. And then I'll look over at like role-playing games, and people will be trying to like break physics in some weird way to launch things to the moon, and I'm just like, well, it could be that.
It could be worse. It could be worse, right? Like, all right, maybe this one just gives this ship like a bit more power than we meant to, but now it's like, oh god, they broke the moon.
Yeah.
All right, D, how about you? Any stereotypes?
Man, it's such a tiny part, like minuscule part of the community. Because
Oh, come
like
on, come on! Don't be diplomatic. They've been roasting you all day today. So
come on.
Oh no!
Reach out,
I am
man, bring it on.
calling. I am calling these people out, the cheaters. Like we know they're there. And usually it takes so long for them to weed themselves out of a community because everyone just finally like they build a reputation and then like everyone just finally gets fed up with them. But as a judge, as a TO, I like to protect my players from that sort. So like if I can identify that sort of behavior, like we know what it looks like, right? It's like what's the wording in the old tournament regs? Like oppressing.
Win at all costs.
Yeah, like placing components with excessive force, and then so things get moved around.
Oh
or,
my goodness.
Like they're super sloppy with their templates when it suits them, and it's always in their favor. Or like I've caught players who like their opponent might turn their back for whatever reason, and then they just like nudge ships. I have absolutely no mercy whenever I encounter these sort of things.
Do they also are the same people that would try to bend rules to like some ridiculous like
Oh
ways?
no, not at all. Like the rules lawyers, that's great. If you can find some sort of exploit that I can't stop you from using, if you are legally playing the game, more power to you. Like congratulations, like you do it on up. Like you're playing by the rules, and that's perfectly fine. But yeah, you start cheating or exhibiting unsporting conduct, like like deliberately rushing your opponent player, like trying to throw them off their game in a way that is clearly untoward, as described in the like we actually have a certain floor rules now.
Right.
Yeah, I won't hesitate to bring the hammer down.
How about Ben? Like any stereotypes of the people that try to bend rules excessively, or like do you say like outright cheat?
I think D sort of covered the big one already with just the people who like cheat but keep it subtle enough that you have to really try hard to catch them.
Because
the ones who
sleight
are-
of hand.
Yeah,
But everyone knows who they are,
They
in
do,
a matter of months.
Yeah.
Really? I don't know. I mean, I generally try to, be like, I try to cheat really quietly so no one ever calls me out on that. But no, I mean, yes. No, but I mean, I try to give like everyone benefit of the doubt. Like I've had people in tournaments like die the wrong thing on the first round, and I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't know. I like the game more than I like winning. That's a tragic way to to play, honestly. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, so yeah. Yep.
What do you guys think of this scenario? Like, so, especially at premier events, right? Like, if someone misdials and they fly off the board, like, sorry, you flew off the board. If I witness this, that's what I'm enforcing. If I'm called over as a judge, like, that's what I'm enforcing. I will not allow it to go to I'll let the player decide whether or not to let his opponent or let his or her opponent have it or not. Like, I don't leave that up to players.
No.
But there is like this other like weird gray space where sometimes players will yell at me, D, you turn around and you go away. Like like they're working it out, and like I'm like, okay, I witnessed nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've taken to I'll only step in if it's egregiously wrong or if the players ask me to. Like if I see someone if I'm walking by and I see someone's dialed off the table and my opponent says no, have it, I'm not going to step in. So unless I actually get called into it, it's not really worth my attention.
Back in the days of when FFG staff were judging events rather than marshalling, I mean, our go-to rule was if they're working it out for themselves and having a good time, just let them do it.
Yeah.
Right, so I will step away as I saw not like just close my eyes, that kind of thing.
Just go with Sergeant Schultz. I see nothing. I see nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it's as long as the two players are relatively like on the same level and relatively able, like it's like kind of like a social dominance thing. Like I see very often that people who are like cheating or like maybe not cheating, maybe they're trying to convince their opponent that their ways right. Like they kind of like use their I don't know their posture or their experience in the community or in the game to kind of like twist it to
Yeah.
themselves. So yeah, and this is kind of like it makes it harder for people to call out.
Mm.
Well, I do think one thing that you know, should be normalized, as I see it at least, is like call a judge if it's in question and like are uncomfortable. And I hope that people do that. When I was judging events, that was something I always hoped people were comfortable doing.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, especially I would sometimes, but again, like there were times where I'd see just folks working it out at top table, and it's like, well, I mean, this is a high stakes match, but if you want to work it out yourselves and you're not asking, I'm not gonna stick my head in, and
Right.
Yeah. The point
So,
that you said with people actually being willing to call the judge, that's probably my biggest pet peeve as a judge, is that people just aren't willing to call you over for things that are actually serious. Like, there's not an event that goes by where afterwards I don't hear about something that would have been at least game loss worthy, if not a straight DQ, but I can't do anything about it because I don't hear about it until 2 days after the event is finished.
people are too
Right, like-
nice.
Yeah.
Well, even or just being even called in way too late. Like if there's 3 minutes left in the match, like how am I supposed to adjudicate slow play? Like that's just
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be confrontational. It's just we need help here, and we're here to help everyone have a smooth game.
I guess this
It's a good way of
dives
putting it.
right. Yeah, yeah. It dives right into like kind of question that I wanted to ask. Is like, what kind of common situations during events that you find like particularly hard to handle, and how should the players act to help like resolve this kind of like situations, like whether is it rules, or toxic behavior, slow play. What are some of the common situations that are hard for you guys?
Slow play is kind of the biggest one, just because it's very nebulous, so people feel very bad about calling it out in the first place. And then, like you said, when you do, you get called over, and it's either too late, or even if you do get called over in time, you can't really take the player's word on it. So you've got to stand there and sort of
Right.
watch for a little bit. But of course, the player will be on his good behavior, and then as soon as you leave, they might just go back. So
There's a dial on them, the speed dial. Like you're like, all right, going out,
yeah.
then turns right, going down.
Yeah.
So yeah, D, how do you feel about slow play? What is slow play? Just
Oh, I mean, it is like Ben said, it's so nebulous. But I don't, just as a general rule of thumb, I just start counting down in my head when I see players not making choices.
Right.
Currently, I go to 30 salami cat, and then I will. And this is after.
Wow.
This is after, of course, like like I'm already like, a choice isn't being made, so then extra time on top of that, and then at that point, I will say, you do need to make a choice. And usually that's more than sufficient for players to get moving and for the game to proceed.
I just on what do you think that they have to make a choice? I have seen decision paralysis is what is the cause of it a lot of the time, is that a player is just stuck between two bad choices and can't actually make a call on
That
it.
happens to me very frequently.
And
Yeah.
you can
I'm
see
like,
them.
oh no, I put myself in this position. What do I do? I hate it.
And
Both
you
suck.
can literally see them with their eyes, like looking at the board, going through each option, each equally bad option, over and over again in the loop. And it's like, all right, you can go through your tree once, and then you got to make a choice.
Yeah, it's like at some point you just got to tell them, like, flip a coin.
Oh, I mean, that's game theory. As a player, sometimes I roll a die. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no! I was gonna say for things like that often works really well. I mean I think at the end of the day, slow play and minis games, unless you're willing to go to a chess clock, which is interesting and has certain ramifications, good and bad.
How did that go at Worlds? Like I was too busy to see
I
that
wasn't-
experiment.
I wasn't really at that event, unfortunately, and I didn't get a ton of info about it. I think it went pretty well. I seem to recall hearing from a few people that it was like interesting and they liked it. I know that was like something OP was interested in continuing to do as like a side event and maybe like build data over a couple events, see how it was going. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, it's it's how chess solves it. I don't know if I was to say what are the other like you know relevant time-based competitive games. I mean, I'm sure there must be solutions for this in like Go and such, right?
So actually, my current policy is I will because like you mentioned, right? Like players complain after the fact, like, oh, my opponent really slow played me. All right, I will make a note of it. It's too late. Like, sorry, it's too late for me to help you in your match at this point.
Right.
That's recorded. It's a done deal. But I will make a note. And for like certain players are clearly slow players because I will then like start tallying hash marks. And then if over the course of a couple events, this player has like numerous hash marks, I'll just privately speak with them and say like this is a situation. I know that you have your personal pace of play, but it's not up to community standards. Like you are over time causing your opponents to become upset. And so at that point, this looks like something that you should work on correcting. And it seems to work. Like I have limited data so far, but I am getting less repeat offenders after such it's just a friendly chat.
Yeah.
So
From just the big judge at large Diyun, that's a friendly chat.
Well,
I'm a friendly guy.
But I think you raise a really good point there. That a lot of issues can be resolved just by talking to the players openly, honestly, and one-on-one outside of the microscope that is everybody in the room staring at you.
Oh geez, that is the worst. You're like sweating and you're trying to figure out where in the rules would like support your ruling, and you're like, where is it? I can't find it. Oh my god, like I
been
suck as a TO. Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's tricky because like okay, so this is something about game design too. I'm just gonna go on a tangent here. So there are clearly some ships that perform better in the earlier game than late game or mid game, which however you hash it. Is there some is there consideration in game design that you have Max, that you need to think about the hour and 15 minutes, like the rough tournament, like game structure, like, all right, we're gonna have this ability is really cool, but it's clearly only good in the first 15 minutes or something, the first engagement, then not so much. Do you consider that?
It's definitely something we consider. I mean, one thing is we don't necessarily design with the goal. Most people who make games that have a certain amount of like quantity of content don't design with the goal that everything is going to be great in every niche. So like it's okay that some cards just aren't that great competitively. It's obviously not okay if something is like way above board competitively, but if something is like kind of weak competitively, but like thematic and fun, and maybe someone will find a niche for it, then it's okay as long as that's like, I don't know. We usually shot for, I mean, it's a little bit of a ballpark, but like somewhere between like 10 and 30% of the content. Like we knew it wasn't going to be like super strong. Often things surprised us. And again, with variable points, that helped a lot too, right? Because it's like, oh, this pilot's kind of a bummer. Well, what if they only cost one more than the generic? Oh, well, that's actually pretty good then,
Or what about 1 point less than the generic?
Yeah, exactly.
Carbon.
Exactly. Yeah, Merle, exactly.
What was that about?
Anyway.
Okay, that's a mistakes were made if ever I've heard one.
Anyway. Yeah.
Resistance needs him. He did nothing wrong.
Anyway,
Yes.
So there's space in the game for stuff that's not necessarily like incredibly strong, as long as it's not like you're not stranding a whole like ship. I mean, at the end of the day, that's sort of where you have to think about it as a product, right? So it's like, oh, if every pilot for this is only good in the first 15 minutes of the game, or only good if it makes it to the late game, the ship has a problem, because as a product, it's going to be very niche and people wanting to use it. But if like one of the pilots is like, oh, they have like an on setup ability, well, that's not going to do much after setup, but it's interesting and thematic, and like maybe someone will find a way to use it. And the other 4 pilots, we feel really good that they're like solid, and that's fine.
Yeah, Ben, I think you were gonna say something about like the power level and things like that.
I've always thought it's fine. So you can't, as Max said, you can't shoot for 100% of everything being good. There's just too much stuff in every game.
Right.
In X-Wing, I've always felt that if a ship has a pilot that's good, it's probably good enough. It's like you don't need to have every pilot for every ship having its own niche or being competitively good. If there's a pilot that sees some use, that's probably fine. The ship is at least reasonable.
We targeted higher than that, but that was aspirational.
One ship, one pilot is good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It sounds worse than it is, but you can't really. With some exceptions, like say the 1.0 Jump Master, it's really hard to actually get a ship where every single pilot has a competitive use.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's also part of the reason that dynamic points are so important to X-Wing Second Edition, because it means that different ships get a shot in the spotlight.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, dynamic points thing. It's like, oh man, I loved it, and I mean, I appreciate it, but I never appreciate as much as when I started Armada. Star Wars Armada. Like the points are printed on the cards, and I'm like, why? Like this is not good. This is not good. Like there are clearly some things that are like underpowered or overpowered, and they're not fixed. And like, oh no, this is bad. And like, oh man, I can't stand now. Now it's like if anything has printed costs on there, I'm like, yeah, this is not nice. So dynamic costing is so good. Yeah. All right.
The dynamic costing as well. I don't know if Max, did it make you feel better as a developer, where you're just like, it's not as crucial for us to get this 100% right the first time around?
Well, we can just ship it. We just ship it. Ship it a beta version.
The big load it took off, honestly. I mean, we weren't super concerned. We didn't want things to miss in first edition, but like what we really didn't want was like, oh, this just blows everything out of the water, right? We didn't want it. We wanted to have as few jump masters as possible, ideally none. We obviously didn't end up there. Because once if the points are locked, once you go, the points are locked, and like sometimes you're gonna miss. In first edition, that was like always the big fear. In second edition, it was nice that there were relatively few cases compared with first edition where something went out and we were like, oh, that's just 10%, 20% undercosted, And if something, so when that did happen, the ability to adjust it was really nice, because it meant like, oh, we don't just have to ban it or do something where we take away all its upgrade slots, although the ability to take away some of its upgrade slots proved really nice too.
And add on too to make some ships viable.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
But again, the most important thing is just this sort of like the most important part of the dynamic points isn't even the balancing per se. It's the churning. Like every game needs to have every game that gets new content. Obviously, this isn't a problem for chess. Needs to have its content cycle, right? You need to have like incentive to like try new stuff and not just like have one thing that you play forever, because if you do, you won't experience most of the game. So you need to have like a way content moves through. Now, obviously, you have Magic the Gathering, where it's just like, oh, after a couple of years, it's out of standard, and then after a lot of time, it's out of these other formats. And then there's bans and such to keep things moving too. But we, with X-Wing, we didn't want to just like have content, roll off of the back of the treadmill at such a like, direct, predictable rate. We wanted it to really be like, Luke Skywalker's in the game and he's going to stay in the game. People want to fly Luke Skywalker and TIE fighters and stuff. And so for that to be the case, their value has to be able to change.
So like speaking of the like what's strong and what's not, and if it's being dominated, if the meta is being dominated by something, there's the churn where it might rotate out and rotate in. Some people might say that the meta is dominated. Current meta is dominated by like XXX something. As like TOs, like how do you feel about that when people come to you and complain about these things? Like, oh man, I want to play, but I can't play against like swarms, or I can't play against like triple sixes or anything. Like, is this something that TOs should address? Like, is this something that we should have a part in? Or we are like, yep, too bad for you guys.
Kind of a bit of both. It's like there's no reason why you can't feel like your local events just do random things. Just say like, well, everyone knows like max initiative is 4 for this event or something. If you're getting a lot of complaints about some particular ace build, but for the most part, at major events, it's sort of like it's outside our job description. I think to worry about the meta so much.
Right. Dee, how about you? What do you think? Like I'm because you're on your podcast too, right? Like Fly Better, and you talk about the meta, and you talk about like ships that are good and not so good. I love your ship files, by the way.
I'm glad someone does.
The T-71. Oh my goodness! Like you guys were on a rant. Like, by the way, I'm on your side here. When you and Farmer were like hashing out like what's good and what's not, and what constitutes good, and objective truth. I'm on your side here. I'm on your side. But anyways, like how do you guys address it? Like is it like you just tell them have patience? Like don't worry. Like it's not a card patience, but be patient. Like and just see like it will be okay. Things will pass.
I mean, as a TO, there's like you run the event.
Yeah.
But of course, like as a community member, you can have a discussion about, oh, maybe you can try such and such strategy or tactic to try and counter the things you're weak against. And I
Right.
absolutely agree with just the cool one-offs, like when we did Las Vegas Open, the Fly Better Grands. We had the strict FFG the tournament for the grands, like the heats as prescribed, just we by the
serious
letter
ones.
of the law. But on that cut Sunday, we also had this ridiculous side event that was just bonkers, and that people were loving it. They were having a fantastic time. So
Mm-hmm.
just
Yeah.
do what you can to provide what the people want, right?
Yeah, I find that like so as a TO, yeah, you're right. As a strictly by your job description, right? As a TO or judge, you just care about running the event, right? Like Ben, like strictly speaking, you're just like, all right, you gotta make sure things happen and do the ruling, and yeah, you just give out the prizes to the people who won. That's it. But like I think it extends to like building a successful scene. Because you do have a lot of say in like whether this event happens or not, or like what kind of events and what kind of formats. So what are the like what kind of tips do you guys have for like growing a successful scene? Whatever kind of scene that applies to you, or like the formats that you find that really makes it like lively. Any tips? Building a
One thing-
successful scene. Yep.
One thing I've seen a fair amount of success with other people doing is, and this is usually just store level stuff, so this isn't necessarily like big events, but folks just like throwing down a game of Aces High, or a game where like they control a full list and then they give a bunch of friends like one ship each. And whenever I've introduced friends to the game, that's always worked pretty well. And I've like seen that happening, and seeing like, oh, this person's probably going to be a new player, because it's just a nice, easy way to play that first game and get a handle on things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the things like Aturi Cluster are just dope
Ah yes,
for
Atari
that like
Cluster.
local scene league night.
Yeah, it's kind of like a RPG light, right? Like you have a character that you slowly kind of like improve over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interestingly in between that, like it's in that strange, like the same as like Rangers of Shadow Deep and like a bunch of other games where it's like kind of in between RPGs and minis games. I think that space is super cool.
I think it's just important to give your players what they want, and sometimes they might not even be aware of something that they would genuinely enjoy. So
Give them what they don't know they want.
yeah, I mean, you just try stuff, and sometimes it'll miss, but when it sticks, it's really satisfying. The pattern that I've fallen into organizing, our Thursday night league night, is it tended to be in a rotation of, yeah, let's just mess around. Like, all right, I'll just create a format or a different, like a completely different form of play, right? Like a Turi cluster or some sort of scenario, team based or aces high, everything you guys are saying. And then, however, though, leading up into, let's say, there's a nearby hyperspace or a system open upcoming.
Right.
Suddenly, like, you'll have a group of players like, oh, I need to tune up, I need to get some real reps in, and then, all right, fine, we'll just do like 3 standard 106 matches, to prepare for it. So just get your thumb on the pulse of what players want and need, and just give it to them.
All right. Any more comments or yeah, go ahead.
Against what Max and D said, we've had in Queensland for about 6 years now. We've been running a league to help new players get involved, which the big thing we found was just getting store inclusivity going. And just for ours, it's like you get a point in the league for every store you attend, just to get players to meander around as much as they can and actually get the communities mingling. Because it's fine having like a community at a shop, but it's great if you can get the community to spread across like 4 or 5 different shops and actually have all the groups talking to each other regularly.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. I mean, well, in Singapore, we are not that big a community, unfortunately. I mean, our players are very strong. I mean, XY is from here, and Justin,
I mean, world champ, yeah.
Yeah, and Justin is here. So, we are a small group, but we punch very, very much above our weight class. So, yeah, we hope to do well in XTC. First time I'm part of a team event as prestigious as that, so we'll see. Yeah, no, I think that's great. Like, yeah, the community scene building thing. I think like Shane has just asked, like, should TOs be community leaders as well, or should they be kind of like more exclusive, like mutually exclusive? The one doing the judging and the running the event, and one like kind of representing the scene or talking to the scene, the players in the community.
I don't know that you can, to be honest. I think the skill sets kind of overlap a lot. In that,
Yeah, in what way?
Yeah, well, but having a good TO is being able to like manage the players, which is helpful for being a TO and being the community leader. You're often the guy who has to organize the event, so you've got an organization. You're the guy who's got to tell people, help people sort out rulings, which is what you need to be a TO. So, like, in an ideal world, I guess you would have them separate, so there's not any possible conflict of interest sort of thing. But
right,
there's just a lot of overlapping. Don't know that requirements is the right word, but what makes a good TO make community leader, and vice versa, in my experience at least.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and they have to have some people skills, right? Like, not piss off too many people all the time. You just gotta piss off some people some of the time, and just rotate, and they'll be fine. But yeah, D, like, how about you? Should TOs be community leaders, or should they be separate, like mutually exclusive?
I don't know how they can avoid being community leaders. I mean, they're the ones like doing pairings or like coming up with formats and stuff. And then, like I said, if you're trying to get the pulse of what the players enjoy, like you just have to communicate and engage and get a feel for that. And by default, that's a leadership position, I think.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Max? What do you think?
Well, I can say that I did not like judging while being one of the developers on the game, because on the one hand, I wanted to be a friendly face of the community, and on the other hand, I had to tell people they were wrong about the rules. However, there's a big difference there between that and being a TO, and that difference is that it was my job to develop the game and also my job to do this. And like, just realistically, when you're dealing with a professional versus versus hobby setting, you're gonna have like different things come up. Like I think in a perfect world, it would be great if the people who like wrote the rules documents and like made the big rules decisions didn't have to judge it themselves, because then the judges on the floor can always just be like, oh yeah, it's just that jerk up there who said that. And then, the people writing the rules can say, oh yeah, it's the judge, and you just blame the other person, right?
Yes.
But realistically, that's not how game communities are. It's like these are small, like grassroots things a lot of the times. You don't necessarily have even when you have large numbers of players, you don't necessarily have large numbers of people behind the scenes. I'm always amazed by how, I'll see some event at a store and it'll be really well run and put together, and it'll be like 2 or 3 people doing it, or one person, and it's like, wow, this is incredible.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because like I start out as just learning this game, and then I'm like, oh, okay, looks like there's a need for people to help out organizing, and before you know it, while I was trying to be behind the scenes and trying to just help judge, because I like rules reading. I mean, I'm a nerd, so I like reading the rules and just like trying to figure out whether some interaction is okay or not. But yeah, then before you know it, like people start asking me for advice, and like passing on like information and things like that to how to inform the broader community. And I'm like, I'm not. What power did people invest in me? Like, what's going on? Like, why are you guys looking up to me? I'm just a nerd. So before you know it, like people start like looking up to you, and I think that's a responsibility you guys have to have. Not to not be drunk on it, but also like giving rules. So you need some kind of authority, but also I think I often have to remind my buddies that like, hey, I'm just an X-wing player, man. I suck at this game. Don't look to me for like, don't look for me for like what should be done. Things like that.
And I don't care like what level of judge they are or how much experience they have, or like even if they, clearly get a call like thoroughly incorrect. The fact is, if they're the head judge, they are always correct by default.
Yep.
So maybe you can try and make your case briefly, but if there's a firm decision, just accept it and move on. And maybe you can talk with the judge after the fact, outside the
Right.
competition setting.
Yeah, something that I've had to drill into players a few times is that once the TO has made a decision at the event, the discussion is over, and you need to just play on. It's no one wins when you try to keep arguing the point. It's much like it's probably go over the head of Max and D here, I suppose. But in cricket, there's a very similar philosophy: is that once the umpire's made a call, it's like that's it, you're done. And even if they're blatantly wrong, you just have to accept it and keep playing.
Cricket players never argue and get tossed from the game. Is that not a thing?
No. Not at the elite level, no. It's the umpire's word is law, mostly because it used to.
How refreshing!
Oh wow!
How does cricket deal with the issue that's come up in various sports and X-Wing too, when the video recording shows a clear violation of some kind?
Oh yes.
How does cricket deal with that? I'm genuinely curious. How does cricket deal with that?
Much the same as we've had to in X-Wing, really. So we just have to say it's like if it's like a clear violation, like players have been cheating, they actually go back and they'll bring the players up on it, which has sort of been done in X-Wing, I suppose. But if it's like an umpire's made a clear wrong call, it's too late by that stage. So
that's good. I think that's the right choice. I was amazed when I discovered that, like, in some sports they actually like roll back. I was like, wow, that's wild.
Yeah. Which, I agree. It's definitely the right way to handle it. Same we do in X-Wing. Like once the judge has made a call, that's it. Play the game on.
Man, Max, I know, like you take some heat for the rules reference, for example, and I'll confess, like a lot of the time, it's guys like me too, right? Like, what is this? What am I looking at? Like, why can't it make more sense, right? But holy cow, like the NFL rulebook is so arcane and ridiculous. There's like the syntax, the FFG syntax blows it out of the water.
Frank did a really good job. Yeah, I remember we were looking at various comparative rules references, and we went to the Magic like rules. And of course, if you want to like learn to play Magic, there's like a nice PDF that just takes you through everything, and whatever that has no resemblance to the actual rules of the game, which are a giant unformatted text document that's like 10,000 pages long, and honestly, if they're gonna have rules that complicated, I actually think there's no way they could lay it out pretty. It was like we were talking about that, and we were like, oh yeah, like it's a pain in the butt for us to update the rules reference, but like that would just be untenable. Like I see why they do it as a big legal document, because I don't know how else you could if it was that big and unwieldy.
Yeah, and you kind of have to, like, speaking of the rules, like, you want it to be like sort of very clear so that there's little ambiguity, but then sometimes when you're making it very clear, it doesn't sound like English, or like it doesn't sound like what people would say in person. It would be like, so it's like in legalese, then you're like, what is this chunk of paragraph? Like, it covers every possible corner case, but then also like you've lost your audience like 3 paragraphs ago.
Oh,
But that's
definitely.
exactly what happened in the NFL. The description, the text for the definition of a reception is just like, it doesn't make any sense.
It covers everything.
I believe that. and I think this is actually why the like learn to play rules reference model is pretty popular, where you have a like, okay, here's the like, here's how you approach the game, and then here's how like, here's what everything actually does if you need to know because you're running an event and you're desperately flipping pages to try to find out.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of circling back to like the whole overall topic on TOs, like what kind of like advice do you guys have for people who are considering or are very relatively new to TO, to being a tournament organizer or judge? Like whether or not like you have personal experience as one, or like what you see as someone who's adjacent to the positions of TO/judge. Like, what kind of advice do you guys want to give to them?
Wow. I would say if there's any part of your heart that has an inclination to do so, just jump in. You'll make mistakes.
Yeah.
But you'll learn from your mistakes. You can always reach out to other community members for advice who have more experience. I know I definitely did, and continue to do so. Really. So don't be afraid of like being overwhelmed or making mistakes or the such. Like, it still boggles my mind that I've now organized and marshaled these massive premier events, because it's like, oh, and it's always like, man, when the tournament software goes down, because I've had that happen to me on multiple occasions. Like,
oh geez,
all right, take a deep breath. Everything's gonna be fine. Now let's just tackle, let's break down these problems into chewable pieces and just one step at a time. Yeah, just go ahead and do it. Like, things will go wrong, and that's unavoidable. I'm not going to say it's fine, but you'll make it through, and you will provide, as long as you're communicating well, and making sure that you're putting the players first and their experience first. Then it's so rewarding and worth it.
Yeah. How are you, Ben? Any advice?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a relatively new TO. Like, I've started, I think, like Shane, if you remember, like, jump in maybe like mid last year. Yeah, so like only like half a year at most. So I don't have much experience in this, and so far people haven't like chant my name, not in happiness, but like like trying to burn me or anything on a stake. So yeah, any advice would be very appreciated.
D kind of nailed it, actually. It's one of the things you kind of just have to jump in and do it. It takes a certain, like, you have to be half a decent organizing. The other one, I suppose I'll say, is pick your tournament software early and make sure you know it inside and out.
Yes, practice with whatever you're using.
Yes.
Because like, if it goes down, that's great, but it's also you don't really want to be having to figure out items during an event while players are screaming for you to get the next set of pairings up. So yeah, to add
That's
on to
okay.
the
Yeah, that's useful. Like
fine.
like
Yeah,
so
whether
Yep.
you want to go old school with Cryodex or use something like tabletop or whatever, it's just like make sure you know how it works and are confident enough that you could handle it on the fly
right.
if needed.
Yeah, like for me, like using some of this like tabletop, for example, like there's a player interface side when you're when you're entering a tournament. That's how you do it, and then there is the TO side, and they are so different. And like I had to like pretty much like sit down and make a fake tournament and run through it just to understand what's going on. I mean, you don't want to like learn it, like you.
That's
Yeah.
the correct choice. That's what we've all done with TTT. That's a universal experience because there's so many more buttons.
Yeah, then
There
I'm
are
like, what
so
is
many more
this?
buttons.
Like, what's going on? Like, wait, there's like lists, and then you can like kick people, and then how do you do the pairings? And I'm like, what are these buttons doing? So yeah, that's quite a thing. Yeah. Max, like, what do you think? Like, what do you think? Like, what are some examples of like things that successful TOs, or judges, kind of like personalities or like the way they conduct themselves that you find that makes them successful ones?
Well, the thing that I had to learn as a judge, and I haven't done much TOing actually. I have run very few events. I've been judges at a fair number of official FFG events over the years, but I've never actually dealt with the tournament software. It seems like a nightmare, and the people who handle it are heroes. um, uh, but anyway, but in terms of judging, and this probably applies to being a TO as well, I think the big thing that I can think of is I had to learn to be patient, not just with the players, although that a little bit too, but also with myself. And just, like, I don't know, do things deliberately. So, like whenever a player asks me a question, if I'm making a rules call, honestly, I always say, okay, give me a second. Let me read the cards.
Yeah.
Because, like, even no matter how well I think I know those cards, even if I wrote them, especially if I wrote them, my recollection might be wrong. And so, like, let me look at the cards, let me flip to the right page, like, you can always add a little time to someone's clock if you need to, but just be patient with yourself and be patient with the players and just take the time to do things right the first time, because you don't want to be flip-flopping or waffling on things. You want to, be able to commit to what you're doing. And I mean, if there's multiple judges at the event and you're not sure about something, grab someone else and talk to them quickly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Like, just take your time to kind of read the card, and if you don't know the ruling right away, which I often don't, like, I'll be like, okay, this is what I know. Let me look at the rules reference and look to like I usually look up to Shane. Like, Shane, you know the rules better than I do. Please tell me your ways, and that works. Any last words here as we wrap up this discussion on TOing, judging, and actually we didn't really roast D too much. We were like, yeah, we sort of, I think we're overall supporting of your decisions.
I got off light. Like I only went through like half of the argument even.
No, we're nice here. We're nice on this side of the world.
It's like we were saying. It's just got to make a call on these sort of things. So with Hera, it's like,
Yep.
Also, if I could share this one protocol I have, it's because I just thought of it because it's been so long since we had in-person events. The last one was I think Fort Worth System Open, but like a lot of it, a lot of floor judging isn't so much like interpreting rules or making rules calls. It's a lot of arc checks and range checks, and the players will call.
I wish people would ask us more often for those arc checks and range checks, because I mean those are important.
Oh, do your players not? Because what happens to me a lot is
yeah.
the players, they don't want to mess it up, so they leave it to the judge. Like, oh, good, a judge is nearby. Like, I'll be walking by, like, oh, good, you're here. We need an arc check or whatever.
Maybe they don't trust my 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 arc
Invariably,
tracking.
though,
So-
what happens is you will then go to check it, and then you will bump a ship
Yep.
every time.
Every
So the
time.
the protocol I have is I always do the eyeball test first. Like I will always
Mhm.
get down at table level with my eyeball and then line up the arc like a gun sight. Like I'll choose 2 points to line up, and I'll make at least a initial call whether something's in or out, for example. And this has come in handy for the number of times I've been a clumsy oaf and yes, like interfered with the position of ships, thus completely nullifying any reasonable call from that point forward. In fact, at a Denver System Open, I had a range 2 ruler that I'm about to do an arc check with, and I don't know what happened, but the ruler just tumbles out of my hand and neatly knocks over both ships exactly. And I'm just, it's like one of those FML kind of moments. I have my head
You
on
can't
the
even
mat, like,
recover from that. You're like, yeah,
no.
both ones are gone.
I just feel so terrible for having failed the players so badly. But meanwhile, both of them they're having a grand old time at my expense. They're loving it. But at the very least, I had that eyeball check that I did before I went near any ships. So I said, I'm sorry, players. Please place the ships back in position as close as you think they were, and regardless of where you place them, I'm going with that initial eyeball ruling on the arc check. And then both players were like, yeah, they were still laughing at me, but they were totally good with it. So try to have those redundancies because bad things will happen.
That's really good advice.
Yep. So, all right. That sounds like oh, someone asked like, how do you feel about laser guides? The laser pointers that are like lines. Do you use them? I bought one a long time ago. It's still in my bag. Haven't really used it after a couple times.
No, I think they're a bad idea because depending on how you cast them, and then there's also quality issues of the laser light or the like the laser level or whatever tool
Mhm.
you're using. The quality can vary widely, but even more to the point, like depending on how you cast it at an angle, you can actually affect the arc massively. You really need to get directly above and lay it down clean. And at that point, it's like, do you have a tripod? Like, how clean? Like, are you exactly directly above and lining it up correctly? Like, it's a whole. The range ruler's much simpler and more accurate, especially the newer fangled judge rulers. Are you guys aware of these? They have the center lines and hash marks.
Yeah, I
Um,
think Curl by CPC has them. I might
yeah,
have a
no,
set.
yeah, fantastic. Yeah, Knuckles does a terrific job with them. John Conley also has manufactured some. But if you're a judge, next time there's like a curled paw creative coupon, for sure acquire a set for yourself because they are indispensable. And heck, even I use them as a player.
All right.
I
Well,
think the same as D on the rules.
yep.
They're good. The lasers, they're good for players if you're checking just like really quickly if there's like a huge traffic jam and you have to move 3 ships to get a range ruler in there.
Right.
They are useful
yeah.
for that purpose, but as a judge, I avoid.
Yeah,
relying.
the decoherency of the laser line as it gets further and further out, like it just makes it like a smudge. The line becomes a smudge across,
Yeah.
and so you're not so much like finding arc lines, but like more like arc smudges. And yeah, I might as well just bring out the ruler because that's clearer,
Yeah.
So yeah, all right. I guess we'll wrap up this interview. At least the proper ones. Oh, I have one question. Nothing to do with judging or thing. Like, all right, so the new Squadron boxes, right? Like we have cards that are more side grade cards. The vectored cannons, the sensitive controls, the TIE Defender Elites. There's been some controversy over like how useful they are, and the fact that they cost points. Do you ever consider them ever going to 0 points or negative points? Max, do you think
Well,
that they would actually?
as with all did you ever consider questions, the answer is always yes. We always talked about it at some point. I short answer, the development process on those was, like going on concurrent with the project I was working on. I know that the app can handle 0-point upgrades. Obviously, there are plenty of those. I'm fairly confident it could handle negative point upgrades because there's nothing about the way it's set up that should make that impossible. Negative point upgrades are a little counterintuitive, which is something that I'm not necessarily a huge fan of as a developer. I would definitely have to be persuaded to negative points, but 0 points, I mean, if it's not worth points and it takes something away, that seems fine to me. But it is no longer my problem.
Yeah. It's a great line to be able to use, isn't it?
Yeah, not your problem.
Congratulations,
Not your...
Max.
You've passed it on to someone else. Like, ha,
It is
your
that
problem.
is someone else's problem to figure out. But yeah, I don't think there's any reason that couldn't possibly be explored. I can see a lot of good arguments against negative points, though, and I would be loath to go there without a good reason. It's not impossible, but
Yeah, I mean, some of these cards, like some of these side grade cards, they're not very. I mean, you rather have the original ability because they are replacing abilities already.
Yeah,
So the fact that they want you to pay more points to replace a pretty good ability in the first place, it's kind of tough for people to swallow.
Yeah, I think of the new ones, the only one I'd consider as a candidate for potentially going negative is the TIE Defender one, just because Full Throttle is ridiculous. And
yeah, Full Throttle is so good. It's. I know that was definitely a point of discussion during development. I do remember that coming up as like Full Throttle is really good. This might well end up being 0, and we may talk about negative stuff again someday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the other ones I think are close enough to, like the Interceptor one. I think is just a optional one.
I wish it was
So
0
that could be
points,
free.
like these sensitive controls. Yeah, because it's like I want to run it on so many things, but having that 2 points when it was like so during like April, like near April 1st, there was a stealth added to the points for sensitive controls from 2 points to 0 points. And someone pointed it out, and it was like, hallelujah, it's 0 points. And we were so excited. I played with that, and it was like, I'm like, oh, this is fun. Nothing too game-breaking, but it's fun. Turns out, it's an April Fool's joke, because they said, yep, sorry, it's actually 2 points, my bad. And I was sad again. It was tragic. Like, why can't it be 0 points?
Well, who knows? Dynamic points. Who knows what'll
Yeah,
happen?
that's true.
Right.
yeah,
And then
that is
Max,
true.
I don't know if I imagined this, but I think I remember you saying this at some point on maybe it was Scum and Villainy. Like, not every card has to be good. I mean, we have tons of dead cards anyway. Like, what's a few more when we're talking about a pack with so much good stuff in it anyway?
Yeah, well, and also I think there's niche roles for a lot of these things, and they don't need to necessarily be great when they come out. Like, a card isn't necessarily, as long as there's new content being made, and there's new content that's announced in the pipe, and there's, I assume, new content being made because X-Wing is a successful game, and people like money, as long as there's new content being made, there will be opportunities for things to shine in the future. Something that maybe isn't worth points now might be in 6 months or a year or 2 years. That definitely does happen. So yeah, I mean, I think the good part with dynamic points is that there's a lot of space to change things, and the good thing about a living game is that there are good opportunities to revitalize things, and sometimes it's by accident, sometimes it's intentional, but stuff can get a new spin on life through new content that comes out. So
Yeah, that's fair. That's true. That's true. Oh, so these side grade options, they are standardized. Does it mean that you need multiple copies of them? If let's say your list has like 5 A-wings, because it's standardized, everyone's supposed to have them. Why can't you just have one card there?
Don't
well, I'm no longer an FFG employee and don't have any financial incentive one way or another, I can say that I am personally fine with you just having one copy, and if we play, that's fine. That's enough for me.
Oh, I mean,
Sorry,
like
I had to.
at
Yeah.
league level, like at my store, or even like the monthly kits or whatever. I mean, I let everyone proxy whatever as long as the communication is clear. Um, at the premier level, like we have to judges. We gotta enforce the rules as they are.
I will just say on that I had a situation come up somewhat recently that sort of highlighted why at premier levels everyone should just have the cards. We were doing our finals for our local league, and the player had just bought 1 struts for his entire separatist list, and his opponent didn't see the strut, thought he hadn't paid for them, and made decisions based on that, and only found out when combat was about to start that they were all meant to have struts on them. So at a league night where nothing matters, sure, but at a competitive level, it is worth avoiding the confusion to just get the extra copies. Borrow them if you have to, buy them singles off eBay, but it's just
man, even
for the sake of your opponents, it's worth making.
Oh, yeah.
even at the local level, I don't want that misunderstanding. Like
Yeah.
seriously, just take some paper and scribble on it.
Yeah.
Proxy it. Or at like minimum, like have tokens, flippy tokens that communicate it. Like you can use X-Wing S foils for all I care, as long as it just clearly communicates information.
Definitely.
Right. Well, I think this wraps up most of our discussions here. Any shout outs? Any last commentary that you guys want to like put forth? Because this is live. We are not going to edit whatever you guys say.
Dangerous.
So. So, any last final words or any things you want to shout out to the community? All right, Ben, why don't you go first?
Oh. This is why I kept speaking up being put on the spot. No, actually, I will actually just buck the trend a little bit and give a shout out to the Illuminati for being willing to make these calls and give us a somewhat consistent experience, especially at the moment with COVID wreaking havoc on the devs' ability to do so.
Yeah, that is true. That is
I
true.
appreciate that. What's funny is I keep getting outvoted within the Illuminati. So
They're like, no, you can't have the players have that much fun, and you're like, why not? Why not? It won't be that bad.
you know what? Like since you took care of us, man. All judges in general, like everywhere, but same for the Cabal. Chris Mitchell and his crew, just fantastic. A bunch of guys doing the same thing on the other side of the pond, and it can be tough.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. All right. And Max, how about you? Any shout outs? Anything you want to say? Any things you want to say to the community at large? And or many like screw you guys. No, I'm done with this.
No, nothing
No.
like that. I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I don't have to professionally worry about the artificial economy of X-Wing anymore, and I won't say that isn't a bit of a load off my shoulders, but somebody else somewhere is carrying that burden, and they have my sympathies. Oops, sorry, I whacked my mic. But yeah, no, I don't know. I've just been, I've said this on every podcast I've been on, but I don't know. It's really touching that people have, found ways to play X-Wing, in the middle of a global crisis, and like just kept it going and kept things, moving, and like I don't know. There's been so much enthusiasm and so many great like fan-run initiatives. I don't know. It's just really nice to see that people are like so excited by it and still
Right.
so engaged and want to keep playing even when circumstances make that difficult.
Right. And I think it's also part of the fact that that's why we really like groups like the Illuminati, like the judges and everything, and online play and people who organize them. They are so important, and so we can't thank them enough. Like for trying to make things work, and yeah, sure, they might say stuff that might piss you off, or like rules things that might piss you off, or like upset you, or render your list concept like illegal. But I think honestly, it's like
I'm
they've done
sorry,
way more good.
No.
Don't. Australia is still salty about XY, so they are very salty.
My
Yeah.
nemesis. I still get to beat him.
Yeah, but yeah, that is very true. Well, I mean, final thing I want to mention for this is for Nabi, all right? Like he he wants justice for Zari. All right, like I'm not gonna go into the debate here, but keep in mind Zari. Like make Zari like good again or something. Alrighty.
I was on Nobby's side again. I got outvoted.
Basically, we need to have our own Illuminati, the new one. Yeah,
With
and Max
blackjack
like
and something.
This is how you
Yeah.
end up with a lot Illuminati escalation, though, is the problem.
yes. Yeah, and Max, like please stay within the community. We would love to have you on as long as you're willing to, help us. Just live stream, like casting games and stuff like that. Like it's been really fun watching you do it for like the other groups out there.
Yeah, well, just let me know. I have really enjoyed doing commentary. I've practiced my best, John Madden impression and such. Of they gotta fly the ships or they gotta shoot the ships.
Very insightful commentary there.
This is why we play the game. But no, I've had a lot of fun. I like to think that I've had maybe a little more insight than that, and I have really enjoyed it. So it's been great to be on, and yeah, let me know.
Well, thank you so much, guys. All right, I guess this concludes our spirited discussion on TOing, judging, and etc. on Gundarks. Nobby, are you there?
I'm still here. I just big shout out to everybody taking part. Been enjoyable watching this. Thank you. And yes, hashtag Justice for Zari. You got to convince the other judges.
No.
They were right.
Not
They
going to
were
happen.
right.
Nobby, have you actually realised that like the more you argue against it, the firmer all the opinions get?
But it doesn't matter. Change the fact that I'm right in this matter. Okay.
Like,
What's he got to lose? Like it's already ruled against him.
I mean, this is true, but like, I'm pretty sure most of the judges at this point are just against it on principle for the meme.
All right, guys. Thanks, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll be back on Tuesday. See you then.